Welcome to RFI's Banking Uncovered, the podcast going behind the industry PR, the media spin, the product awards, and the investor reports to look at what's really going on in the customer data, and to ask global thought leaders about their thoughts and views on the future of banking and payments.
Chloe James here for RFI's Banking Uncovered. Really excited in this episode to be chatting with Jess Alloy, who is the Australian go-to-market lead for Square. Now, Square very recently won a great award at the Australian Banking and Finance Awards, Most Recommended Merchant Services in the non-major bank category. Jess, great to have you on Banking Uncovered.
Thank you, Chloe. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, our pleasure. Well, firstly, what an award. There's obviously a lot of great categories in that awards ceremony, but being most recommended is kind of what you really want to go for, because that's what customers are saying about you. So I just wanted to start off with saying congratulations about that, and maybe you could give me your thoughts on what might have been the key drivers for that success.
Thanks, Chloe. And look, it's definitely the one that you want to win. And I think from our perspective, we believe that the recognition really comes down to three things. So, first, everything that we do at Square is built around this, one core principle, which is about running businesses easier for our sellers. So, we really work hand in hand with our sellers. We're listening closely to their feedback. We're continuously building tools that do solve, real world problems. And I think that sort of two-way relationship is at the heart of why we're trusted and why we're recommended. Secondly, we are a tech company at our core. And so, really what we're trying to do is deliver innovation that doesn't just look good. It actually solves a problem. So I think, sellers, they do expect, tools to be smart and powerful and all those things, but they also need them to be simple, accessible, and as I said, genuinely useful. So our ecosystem kind of lets them do everything, from taking payments to running, payroll, and we can facilitate that to be all in one place, and ultimately that saves time. It reduces stress, and it lets businesses focus on what they love and what they're good at, and I guess ultimately growing their businesses. And then thirdly, it's our people. So the Square team in Australia is deeply embedded in the communities, of our sellers. And I think, from whether that's our sales team or product or partnerships or wherever, we've got experts who I think really deeply understand the industries that we serve, and they're obsessed with solving problems that I think really matter. And whether that happens through product development or policy work or whatever it is that you do, or just listening and learning, we're very much here to champion sellers. So I guess that's kind of how we're thinking about the win.
Awesome. I love the piece on obviously your people and the team there. And I think we hear around the world that obviously Square is a great place to be. And we're going to come on to some questions on sort of culture and the team there as well. But also just the ease and simplicity. It's the age-old tale, isn't it? That's really what works for your customers. And just such a good point. You're just helping them to do business. That's what they want to do. They want to do their business, and then
that's right.
Stuff to work.
They don't want to worry about all the back end stuff. Exactly.
Exactly. That's up to you. Want to chat a little bit about NPS, because obviously RFI, provides that detail to you, and got a good stat here that Square has a pretty sizable lead when it comes to merchant services NPS. As of March 2025, so very recently, last month, was plus 42.5. And just a note there that all the major banks are under 10. So that's pretty amazing. There's also a big jump from May last year in 2024, which was at plus 23.8. So 23.8 to 42.5. So it's been a really big growth even in the last year. How do you believe it, probably to the points that you've just mentioned, but just maintaining that really high level of advocacy? And something else we also see in the research that we do is that Square customers often say they choose Square because it was recommended to them by another, peer, merchant, friend, another business owner.
That's an absolute, we get a lot through word of mouth. I think, look, businesses, from what we hear, they love Square because we've fundamentally changed what running their business looks like. And that, before Square, that they found things really complicated. They're juggling multiple vendors, clunky systems, kind of confusing fees. And we've been able to simplify all of that. So what we provide is this all-in-one solution. It gets them up and running in minutes. And I think probably in the bad old days, that might have taken, weeks. And that's everything from payments to staff management. It's all connected. And, our pricing's clear. It's easy to understand. And I think that simplicity gives business owners time back to focus on their craft, which, as we've said, that's kind of what they're all about. I also think it's about how we show up. You know, our team is very much on the ground. You know, we are partnering directly with businesses, and we're not just offering products; we're offering support. You know, education events. You know, we've got local expertise that's available when it counts, and I think sellers feel that,
Mm.
and I think they sort of feel that we're in it with them. And I think, you know, when businesses grow with us, that's when they advocate for us. And I think
Mm.
Fishbowl is actually a really good example of that. So Fishbowl started in Bondi and they've
Mhm.
got now, you know, 50 stores around the country. They're actually expanding into the US. I think they've got 2 stores in the US now, and they've
Wow.
scaled entirely on Square. And, you know, I think that kind of long-term success builds loyalty, and that loyalty then ultimately turns into advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to ask, really interesting the workshop piece because this is, I mean, we should say with the podcast as well, people listening, this is a great place to gather ideas about, how to meet your customers' needs. So would that be an example of how you sort of gather feedback and then integrate that into your service offerings? What else does Square do when it comes to gathering feedback from your existing clients and even perhaps clients to be?
Yeah, look, I think this is all about customer centricity at the heart of it, really, isn't it? And I think,
Yeah.
you know, we certainly see that customer centricity is at the heart of everything that we do. And we very much feel that our success is directly tied to the success of our sellers. You know, we kind of can't succeed unless our
Mm.
sellers succeed. And so I think every product feature update, you know, all that begins with one question, and that is, you know, is this something that's going to make life easier for our sellers and will it help them grow? And I think
Mm.
the best people to answer that question are the business owners who are actually using our tools every day. So we work closely and collaboratively with them to make sure that our solutions, you know, I keep going on about, you know, being useful, but that's so important.
Mm.
But we're really regularly engaging with local businesses to understand their challenges, and we're
Mm.
feeding those insights straight into our product development. And then that sort of ongoing relationship with our sellers helps shape what we build, you know, how we build it, how we deliver it, and then ultimately kind of, you know, what drives that, you know, NPS result at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. How much, obviously a huge global business, how much conversation and collaboration is there between the global business in other parts of the world and the Australian business, obviously where you're situated? But
Yep.
how does it align with the global strategy? Is it similar? It was a great example to give the fishbowl example as a success story, especially an Australian Bondi, obviously in Sydney, New South Wales, and taking now that to the US. So how much do you work with your other businesses globally?
So look, from a global point of view, it's interesting. You know, we you know, from a mission perspective, our mission is consistent around the world, and that's the sort of thing that I mentioned at the start. It's about making running a business simpler for our sellers and more accessible. What
Mm.
makes Square unique, I think, is how we combine the innovation and scale of this sort of global tech company that we've got with local expertise and understanding. So I think, you know, we understand that what works for a bakery in Brooklyn might not work for a restaurant in Rockhampton.
Yeah.
So we build with that in mind. And I think, you know, we tailor our services in two kind of key ways. So first, we adapt global products to meet local needs. So for example, our hardware is built to be reliable anywhere, but we make sure it works seamlessly in the Australian market. And then the second thing is that we do create features specifically for Australia. So you know, for example, we've got automated surcharging, which, you know, businesses can use to apply weekend and holiday rates. That's an Australian thing that doesn't exist elsewhere. You know, we also automate things like GST setup or, you know, things like that to save sellers time and reduce
Mm.
errors. And those are built just for this market. And I think that balance of global strength and kind of local focus is
Mm.
why Square resonates so strongly with Australian businesses.
Yeah, and especially if you think about Australian small business community, it makes up, 98% of businesses or something in Australia. So it's a huge need within
It
our
is.
market.
Yeah.
What's your view on competition? I know obviously, Clover's recently launched in Australia and competition is a good thing, I think, across financial services and professional services, really. What's your view on, keeping that competitive advantage in what Square do?
Yeah, look, I think maintaining a competitive edge, I'm going to come back to customer obsession again. I think that has to
Mm.
permeate every part of your business.
Yeah.
I think, you know, your sellers need to really feel like your world is focused on solving their problems. And if they feel that, then they'll, you know, stick around and they'll support you in return. What really sets Square apart from a competitive point of view is the power of our integrated ecosystem. I think, you know, sellers don't have to piece together this patchwork of tools from different providers.
Yeah.
It's where everything just sort of works together, whether that's taking payments or it's managing staff or, you know, running your website or funding or whatever. And I think that kind of simplicity is hard to beat. That's always been kind of value proposition. And I think, the other thing for us that we focus on is accessibility. So we are making powerful technology available to businesses of all sizes. And this is sort of how Square was born. It's not just the ones who've got big budgets or big tech teams. And I think it sort of levels the playing field, and it helps more people succeed on their own terms. And then finally, we keep evolving. So, we're listening to our sellers, where we're staying ahead of where the competition's going, and we're moving faster to meet new needs. And I think that sort of agility and adaptability is a big part of how we stay ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're making me think of when I'm at sort of a little local market and buying some local art or something. I know that's a good example of when I've used Square recently, buying a piece of art for my husband actually, and just using the little Square terminal. And that's, a market seller selling their art, getting it out there into the hands of their customers. It's to the bare bones of that, isn't it?
And that's where Square was born.
Yeah.
And so absolutely that's we're sort of on a journey of evolution from that point. But that is, it's all about access to the economy. And that's the kind of core principle on which we're built.
Absolutely. Thinking about evolution, and I love that. And obviously, you're renowned for innovation in the market and in tech and in financial services space. Just a little bit interested, if you can, maybe you can't give some secrets away, but just what you're excited about in the future, and any kind of new to market ideas or concepts, or just anything that we can maybe keep an eye out for in the coming 12 or 24 months.
Yeah, we've got a massive year coming up, Chloe, and I obviously can't give everything away just yet.
Yeah.
But I can say it's a really exciting year of product development for us. And what's most important to us, I guess, is that everything that we're working on is directly tied to the challenges that local businesses are facing right now. So we're not building tech, for the sake of it. We're building and launching tools that we think are going to make a real difference to Australian businesses. And one area that we're exploring is how to make AI more accessible. So businesses are, and you can't kind of turn anywhere without running into AI at this point. But, obviously businesses are starting to experiment with AI, and we are asking how we can bring those capabilities into the Square ecosystem in a way that, genuinely helps them operate smarter. Another big focus for us is helping businesses unlock new ways to grow, and that includes expanding how they reach their customers. And we also know that businesses want more flexibility in how they accept payments. So that's something that we're working on as well. So new ways to help businesses, I guess, meet customers where they are. And I know I'm being a bit elusive here, but do keep an eye out on us this year, because we have a lot of good things coming.
Oh, I can't wait. That's exciting. Well, we might see an innovation award next year, perhaps, given what's coming out in the next 12 months. You spoke a little bit about culture in the team, and I've got some friends in the US who work at Square, and obviously it's one of those companies that you, as I said at the top of the interview, really you do hear about it being a great place to be. What is the culture like within the Australian team? How have you seen that kind of come to into a great vision, and how do you think that influences your customer outcomes? What's it like to be there, and then how do you think that flows on to the culture that your customers receive?
It's a great question. And look, so I joined Square in January. So I'm relatively new, and I think I've sort of touched on this already, but the thing that's really stood out for me, and the thing that gives me so much optimism, is how passionate the Australian team is about supporting small business. So the culture here is really collaborative, it's mission driven, and it's absolutely, seller obsessed. And, we hire people who, intentionally care deeply about solving real problems. We've got former hospitality workers here who, are out building the very tools that they kind of wish they had on the floor when they were in their hospo jobs. And we've got people who are genuinely passionate about economic empowerment, and they're, in the business now working on ways to, help more businesses access the economy. And I think that passion kind of comes through in everything that we do. It shapes the products that we build, the way that we're supporting our customers and how we're showing up. So it's actually super inspiring. It's, not like any other culture of any business that I've been in. So yeah, pretty uplifting.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Uplifting is great. The next 5 years. So you're relatively, well, 5 months into this role, but it sounds like you're very inspired, and it's a great place to be. What does the next sort of 5-year trajectory look like for you and for the business? I'm imagining huge growth, huge innovation, evolution.
Yeah, all of the above. And look, and I think, if we think about Australia in the next 5 years, I think Australia is only going to become more entrepreneurial. And I think Square's, we're already well placed to help turn, those great ideas, and whether it's a side hustle or it's a full-time venture, whatever that is, into a thriving business. That's our goal. So we're going to keep investing in Australia so that we can grow our impact and support more sellers across more industries and regions. I guess ultimately what we want is to be the go-to platform for every type of business, whether you're just starting out or you're scaling nationally, or whatever that looks like. We want to continue building tools that are going to help businesses stay agile, efficient, kind of ready for what's next. Our role is to empower entrepreneurs and businesses, and so in that context, there's a lot more that we have planned.
Oh, fabulous. So it sounds like a really exciting time ahead. And it's such a good point, isn't it? It's Australia, but even globally, and the way the workforce and roles around the world are going. I think we will continue to see this sort of entrepreneurial uplift, and so many people, so many great ideas, and right from small businesses all the way through. But they need a business like yours to enable them, empower them, provide them with the tools so that they can concentrate on doing what they do best and getting their goods into the hands of customers who want and need them. So thanks, Jess. Thank you for your time. Awesome time on Banking Uncovered today. Really appreciate your generosity of thought. Congratulations on the win. Look forward to seeing what you might take back next year.
Thank you so much, Chloe. It's been a pleasure.